serious very soon. Okay? So today's topic is probably the most important one. You know why? Because you can know your life purpose. You understand everything. Okay? Understand the stars, understand life. But you still do the wrong thing. You mess up your life. Right, young man? Right? You do the wrong thing, you mess up your life. You know better. You know it's wrong to fall in love with some married person, right? But you still do. Or you know it's wrong to cheat government on taxes, you still do. Or you know it's wrong to cheat an exam, right? Do you cheat an exam? No. You still do something you know in your head is wrong. You mess up your life. So therefore, do the right thing is the key to living a good life, right? It's so obvious, right? Doing the right thing is the key to living a good life. Now, doing the right thing means doing things that doing the right thing equals to taking the responsible action. Okay? Now, how do you know? How do you know you do the right thing? And how do you know that you're taking a responsible action? There are two ways. Okay? One way is complete the rippling effect test. How many of you have done that? Right? Okay. Thank you. So, you do that too, right? Now, if you complete the test, you know that the negative effect is huge. You know, you have a negative effect at all levels. It will affect your family, your friends, society, but affect the environment, affect humanity. Because we're all interconnected, remember? We're all interconnected. So you will know the negative effect is huge, where the positive effect just make you feel better for the moment, okay? Just give you some cheap thrill, okay? You know the positive effect is so limited that you know it's the wrong thing to do. Am I right? Does that make sense to you, Alex, right? You will know the negative things outweigh the positive thing by a wide margin. The only good thing to get out of it is make you feel better, okay? You scold people, you feel better, okay? Or give you short-term advantage. So that's the right thing to do, right? Another way to decide what the right thing to do is to say, am I doing something that is consistent with my highest purpose, my life goal? Okay? Or would that derail my life goal? Is it consistent with my highest core values? So everybody has a conscience. Everybody has a core. Am I doing something that actually troubles my own conscience? It contrary my values. Then don't do it, right? Or am I doing something that is contrary to my best understanding, purpose, understanding, and ability? Is it contrary to my best understanding of the situation, of the consequences, of the impact? I understand everything in my head. I'm very clear that what I'm doing is the wrong thing, but do I still do it? You must still go ahead and do what is contrary to your purpose, your value, your best life, your best understanding. Then you will mess up your life. So that's why the R thing is very important. Do the responsible thing very important. Now, Another problem is that most problems can be resolved by accurately proportioning vulnerability. Because when you do something, okay, or when some problem occurs, often there are many sources of causality, right? So most things happen because of many factors, not just one thing. So most problems can be resolved if you can accurately proportion the vulnerability. 10% is mommy's fault. 20% is little Alex's fault. 30% is daddy's fault. 40% is God's fault. Oh, society's fault. So if we can accurately proportion the vulnerability, then it's easier. Okay, let's get some exercise. Now, who is responsible for marital problems?
Both.
Both.
Yeah.
But in marriage counseling, the husband said, it's all her. She's the problem. The Bible says, it's him. Right? If they say both, don't win the problem, right? Instead of that, if you say it's both, they will sit down and say, well, how can we correct the problem? But most cases, in divorce, invariably, it's always one person accused the other person. It's all his fault, or all her fault. See? Or how about addiction? Who is responsible for addiction? Huh?
You are underestimating yourself and you become addicted, I think.
Who is responsible for addiction?
Yourself.
Yes,
You could say a lot of things, though. You could say your parents, because your parents were addicts. You could say
Yeah.
friends who got you involved. You could say it's your lifestyle.
Yeah,
I think that you
very
are
fault.
responsible for
You
it.
see, some parents, I know parents, they give the kid 8 years old
Yeah.
a beer to
Oh,
drink.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
And they become
And some
alcoholics.
kids were addicted before they were born.
Yeah.
And there are two schools of thought, okay? There are two schools of thought. One school of thought saying that if you are a drug addict, you're responsible for the onset. In other words, you're responsible for getting started. But you are responsible for the offset. The offset. You know why? Because the drug is so powerful that when you consume the drug, it changes your brain chemistry, it creates chemical dependency, it becomes a disease which can only be treated with drugs and medicine, whatever. So you're responsible for the onset, but you're not responsible for the offset. Another school of thought said that, well, addiction is not a medical problem. Addiction is an adaptation problem. It's a behavioral problem. You know why you use drugs? Because you can't handle the problem in life. You don't know how to adapt. You can't handle the stress, the loneliness, the depression. You don't feel comfortable living under your own skin. You want to escape from the world. Frankl said, remember Frankl said, addiction is one of the neurotic triad. Depression, aggression, and addiction. The three are the neurotic triad. You can't cope. So in order to get rid of addiction, you are responsible for learning how to cope with your problems without resorting to drugs. Right? That's what goes out. But even if you say, oh, addiction is a disease over which I have no power, but you still have the ability of checking yourself in a rehab, of going to see a doctor for help, right? You still have to cry for help. Now, how about day rape? Are you familiar with day rape? What's day rape? Like, a young man or young woman or man or woman, they will date, right? Take your time. They flirt with each other and a regular chemistry, they touch each other, play for scene or whatever. Okay? so they're ready to, to get intimate. Okay. So the guy say, well, what do we count about this? The children don't listen. Okay. The guy say, well, why do they come to my apartment for another drink? The girl say, why not? They hug each other, holding hands, kissing each other, and go to the apartment and have another drink. Okay. They say get intimate, and the girl don't resist. They seem to enjoy it, and both get hot. And the next thing they know is that when the girl woke up in the morning, guy is beside him, both are naked. So he said, oh my God, what have I done? I don't remember a thing, I black out. So she regret. For having sex with this guy, who he hardly knew. So she sued him for rape. This happened many times there, on campus and off campus. So who is responsible?
The addiction.
Huh? Both, right?
Yeah.
Does the rule have a case? Does it have a case?
Yeah.
Huh? She had a case to sue the guy?
Not to sue him, but that's a tricky situation, though. I think
I see.
it's
I
tricky.
think it depends on the circumstances.
Yeah, it's a situation that's tricky.
The circumstances that she never say no.
Yeah.
She willingly, what do you expect? At night, 12 o'clock, go to the guy's apartment.
She was who?
What do you expect? You expect a prayer meeting in the guy's apartment?
Well, if they're Christian, if they're young Christian people, then maybe
You got a
they
prayer
could have a
meeting,
prayer
it's hard
meeting.
work. But what do you expect? The guy is a saint, a monk.
Yeah.
Right? Simple as that.
Yeah, there has to be these ground rules, isn't there? Ground rules.
Huh?
There has to be ground rules.
Yeah.
I'm
So
not
sure.
you never say no. You went to the apartment at 12 o'clock, continue to drink, hugging, kissing, everything. And then both get so hard and went all the way. And wake up, I regret. It's too late. Right? So, how about depression? Who is responsible for depression?
I think that again, it's up to each person.
Well, generally, who knows?
No, it's
Yeah,
a combination
who
of
who is
personality and your environment,
Yeah.
and what's going on.
What's
in your
going on
life.
in your life?
It's a lot of factors that get into depression.
As long as you're talking non-chemical kind of depression, right? Like it's
Well,
not in the belts and
but it could be go to the gene, the imbalance, the brain chemistry, the manufacturer. But if it's simple depression, or recover from depression, who is responsible? Think about that, okay? The fish needs what? The fish needs water, right? You may take the fish out of water, what happens to the fish? The fish will depressed, right?
yeah, very depressed.
Very sad, depressed, then you actually die, right?
If you put him fast back, it will be okay.
Yeah. And how about any animals? Like tiger, lion, would they get depressed and put them in the zoo?
Yeah.
Why? They are away from their natural environment,
Yeah.
right? You agree with me, right? You get them TV, toys, but they still feel depressed. They want to be back to nature, right?
You need to be free.
Huh?
You need to be free.
Really? Oh yeah, Willie story, right? The Willie story. Set Willie free, right? He'll be happy. Oh, lion, born free, right? Now, what is the natural human environment? We're human beings.
To be surrounded by other people.
No.
People need people, right? Now you put people in concrete blocks, in a tiny little room, cut off with all relationship, displaced, disfranchised, alienated, cut off from all meaningful relationship. What do you expect?
Loneliness and depression.
No, that
Depression.
person will be depressed, right? All right? But we're taken away from the natural environment, which means people, closeness, right? I put a little box that go to jail. Of course you'll be depressed. Will you be depressed if you lock down your box? You'll be depressed too. So, well, look at the factors, see? There are many factors that contribute to our problem, right? But still, there's something you can play, right? So even when you're depressed, you can seek help, okay? You join a group like this, which is free. There's still things you can do, right?
You go to library, you do many things.
Yeah,
You go
yeah. Or you carry a sign, stand on the street, say, I'm depressed, I need help. Right? You get attention, right? Some people come, oh, why are you so sad, you know? I took have a friend. There's so much you can do, right? So, my interaction came too long, right? Now, but people don't like to hear the word vulnerability, you know why? Because they will point a finger at you. You're to blame. You're responsible for the man. You're responsible. And they point a finger, right? Blaming you, right? And put you on a guilt trip. You know, Chinese mothers, Jewish mothers are very good. You make the children feel guilty.
Yeah.
If they don't do that way, alright? If children don't listen to them, oh, they're sick. You don't obey me, you make me sick. I'm going to die. So go trip. And you also mean a moral obligation. Well, do I have to look after my parents? Do I have to look after my little brother? It's not a burden. You know, that what is no love? What is no love? It becomes more obligation. It becomes a burden. What no love? Caring for the elderly. If there's love, right? That is less a burden. But you will hate your parents. That becomes burden, right? They will burden. And finally, it puts a threat to your personal freedom. You know, that's not what you do with your life. You do things, go places, and now children, marriage, parents, job. There's so many things tie your hand. You want to be free, right? So many people regret for getting married too early because it deprived them of their freedom. They got tied down, right? They're tied down by children, by vulnerability, they have a job, they hate. So getting married too early can make you feel miserable enough. See, it's threatening your freedom. But there are also positive meanings to vulnerability. First of all, it makes you feel good, right? That you do what's right. You know, a moral aging, living in a moral universe. Okay? Every time you do something good, how do you feel? You feel good, right? Every time you do something bad, how do you feel? Eh? Alex?
Good.
Bad. Right? I'm
I'm a psychopath, right? I can feel good.
Unless you're a psychopath, right?
Yeah.
But also normal people, right? Normal people feel good from doing good, Because we are moral agents, right?
Yeah.
God get the freedom to choose. If we choose to love God, I feel good. If we choose to love people, I feel good, right? The ability to choose means we are free agents. Right? Also, I sense of freedom and self-efficacy. When you decide to do something, you feel that you are able to have control over the environment. You have a sense of self-efficacy, that you can make things happen. Right? Self-efficacy that you can make things happen. You're not determined by the environment, but you can change the environment. The third is, you might say, Alex, I count on you to get this done, okay? Or the group depends on you. That means what? That means they trust you, right?
They depend on you something.
Let me see. That means you're trustworthy, that you have sense of personal significance, right? The group depends on you to do something. In the church, right? I mean, if you ask to do something, that means they depend on you. So you feel, they trust me, right? I'm trustworthy. I'm an important person. I'm an important member of the group. Related to that point that you feel that you belong, right? You're a responsible member of the group, that means you're a worthy member of the group. Finally, if you have the ability, you feel that you have control over your future destiny. Your future is in your own hands, right? Right?
Living in a dream world.
Well, if our analysis, it doesn't matter. There can be fate, there can be situation beyond control, but ultimately,
You need a dream.
you
We all
live,
need a dream.
you live, and ultimately, you have control over your own attitude. Having the right attitude makes a big difference. You can't control everything else. You can control your attitude. Say, I'm going to live with dignity and pride. You have no job, no good look, no nothing, but I'm a human being, I'm going to live with pride and dignity. That counts. That counts. Okay? Now we learn that Frankl says that we always have freedom of choice, right? You always freedom of attitude. And we all condemned to freedom. What do I mean? You say, I don't make choice. But it's still a choice, right? You choose not to do anything, that's still a choice. It doesn't matter what I do, you are making a choice. We're condemned to make choices. Do nothing, you still choosing, you choose not to do it, right? But on one hand, we're condemned to freedom. On the other hand, we're blessed with the capacity for freedom and ability, right? So freedom is a two-edged sword, right? Freedom gives you anxiety, what should I do, whatever. But freedom also gives you a sense of power, right? I have the freedom to choose my future. Now, as a perspective, now for Frankl, remember Frankl said, ask not what can get out of life, but ask what life demands of you, remember? And Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you do for your country, right? The same idea.
Yeah.
So reliability means response, ability to meet the demands of situation and demand of life. In every situation, okay? So my wife asked me asked the question that, is it possible that you're always seeking purpose, seeking meaning, so therefore you never really lived? I said, not possible. You know why? Here's the answer why. In every situation, the situation say, well, Sue, do you know what is your ability in that situation? What is the meaning that demands of you? What will be your meaningful involvement in that situation, right? At every turn, every step, life is shouting at you, say, Lin, what's your role in that situation? Right? What is the meaningful thing to do in that situation? Now, every day, in every situation, life shouts at you. God calling you. Do the right thing. Do the responsible thing. Now, in every situation, you do what is the demand of the situation, what a meaningful thing to do, then every day you'll be living a meaningful life, right? You're not waiting until 5 minutes. And Frankl said, there are two kinds of meaning, remember? One is the ultimate meaning. What is the ultimate meaning for my overall life? Well, he said, that is a tough question. You will never find it. You approximate, right? But the key thing is that in every situation, you ask yourself, what is the meaningful thing to do in that situation? So every situation presents an opportunity to do something meaningful. That's the key, right? The next sentence, Jean-Paul Sartre said, existence precedes essence. Now, this is a well-known idea in the existential circle, okay? Existence precedes essence. Now, what does that mean? That means the freedom and responsibility to choose how you exist, how you live, determine what kind of person you will become. You know what I mean? You're not born with some essence about you. You're given an existence, a life on earth. How you choose to live your life determine what kind of essence you have, what kind of person you become. Right? Though we're thrown in this world, we all have an existence in this world. It is what you do with your life that determine what kind of person you become. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's why the freedom and ability are a very important word, in existential psychology. Now, another way to look at ability is the moral duty. Okay? Now, Max Weber wrote this important book called Personal Ethics and the Spirit of Capitalism. He said, remember last time I talked about his explanation. Why prosperous countries are more prosperous than capitalist countries or Muslim countries? Remember last time? There are two explanations. One explanation is that when God banished Adam and Eve away from the paradise, okay, and said, well, you have a toy, okay. But he changed the idea, is that, well, we have to work, not because we're punished to work, but actually, hard work leads to material success. Material success is a sign of God's blessing. See? If you put in effort, okay, to produce wealth, to create wealth, then wealth is a sign of God's blessing.
Are you sure?
That's a theory, not sure, I'm not saying, that's a theory, right?
It's not really true.
So effort becomes very important now. Effort means that in school and work, we're always rewarded for effort, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you work hard and fail, people say, well, at least you try, right? If you try your best and fail, nobody blame you, right? Nobody blame you, but you try your best and fail, you say, well, maybe you don't have ability or don't have experience, right? Maybe you need some training. But you don't try, you don't put the effort, then you'll be punished, right? That's common. But even though he's tempted, he didn't commit adultery. Okay, one person. Another person, not interested in sex. You're dancing in front of him naked, he won't bat an eye, He's not interested in women, or not intersex, okay? So which person is more moral? Which one? The first one or the second one? Alex, which one is more moral?
First one?
Good. Research agree with Alex, okay? Research shows the person who are evil thoughts, but did not do evil things, are considered more moral than people who have no evil thoughts. You see what you're saying? Right?
His control.
Yeah, because the person who did not yield to temptation exercise more control, right? If you're not tempted, so no big deal, right? Now, vulnerability also means vulnerability for others. Now, psychologist Sternberg said vulnerability includes wisdom to be responsible for others. And Jesus said, love your neighbor. And say, who is my neighbor? The story of the Samaritan says what?
Everyone's my brother.
Okay, tell us the story about the Samaritan.
Oh, okay.
It's loud as I don't hear you.
Well, this guy was traveling on the road and he was mugged and he was thrown in a ditch. And a Levite came by and who was a religious man in Israel, and he didn't want to touch the guy because then he'd be unclean. And then another religious person or another person came by and he didn't want to touch him either. So the one that was most despised in Israel was the Samaritan, because they were like half-breeds. And this Samaritan coming by helped the man. And Jesus asked I guess it was this, I can't remember who it was that asked him, Pharisee or Sadducee or something. He asked him, well, who is the
Neighbor.
yeah, who's the good neighbor? And he says the one that helped him. He wouldn't even say Samaritan, the one that helped him. So I guess the bottom line was, well, who is my brother? Well, everyone's my brother.
The neighbor, right?
Yeah. Anyone that's in need should be helped.
Everyone needs a neighbor, right?
Yeah.
So a society is judged by how we treat the helpless and the disenfranchised, right? A civil society has a sense of social justice. Remember, nowadays in psychology, my wife said, well, why does someone talk about social justice? Because the Democrats and liberals, okay, tend to emphasize social justice. The conservatives and Republicans tend to emphasize personal responsibility. You are responsible for taking care of yourself. And the Democrats say, well, the government should take care of the poor and needy. Our NDP in Canada, NDP said, well, we can add social justice. The government should take care of the needy. Right? So we need both, right? You need to help yourself, and when you fail to help yourself, there has to be a safety net, right? We need a social safety net to help those who can help themselves. Right? So vulnerability means both. Now, in the Jesus ministry, what he was on earth, he just preached. He spent most of the time healing the sick and feeding the poor. Right? They said, well, Jesus' job is what? Is to proclaim the good news to the poor, to proclaim freedom for the prisoner, to recover the sight for the blind, and set the oppressed free. That's the ministry. And elsewhere, Jesus said that he come to bind up the broken-hearted. Remember? Yes, people are broken heart, right? Or broken. So he spent most of his life not just preaching, but actually helping people. Now, reasons for decline of personal ability. We realize that there is a decline of personal ability in contemporary society. The first is victim mentality. If you have a problem of violence, my parents' fault. My parents fight all the time. That's why I learned to be violent. Okay? Or my gene, I was born with a violent gene. Right? Or environment. I have a job. I just pay bills, the pressure, of course I get mad. Right? You know, the victim mentality is never me, it's always other people. The second thing, entitlement. I'm entitled to good life, you know, Alex? I'm entitled to get A. Everybody's entitled to get A, you know? You have put in the hour, I should be able to get A. I'm entitled to everything. The victim mentality and entitlement, they're related. Okay? The third point is that if people always do things for you, you learn dependence on other people. Now, here's the part, defense mechanism. We have all kinds of defense mechanisms we use to protect our ego. Like denial, right? Denial. Or rationalization, right? You make up a story to justify your action. Most people have problems in life because there's so many defense mechanisms that nobody can get through to them. Right? They get so defensive. I mean, they defend everything they say. They're so defensive. You don't know how to talk to people like that. Now, here another thing is that the attribution research demonstrates two kinds of biases. This self-serving bias is related to defense mechanism. Self-serving bias means what? Means that you take credit for success or blame others for failure. Right? The online research has shown that in a task, that every member has mathematically equal contribution to the success or completion of a task. But when you interview them, each person claims that they contribute more than other people. What the problem is always other people's fault. Now, self-serving bias is one of the defense mechanisms to boost our self-esteem, to protect our ego. The other attribution bias is called actor-observer bias, which is responsible for many marital conflict, is this, okay? If I did not fix the dryer or whatever problem in the house, my wife can say, you still haven't got it done, you're a lazy person. You promised many times to fix it, you still haven't done it, you're a lazy person. Now, if she did not do what she's supposed to do, she always has a good reason. I won't tell my wife for real, just an example of that. If she would say, well, what do I expect, okay? I do multiple tasking, okay? I do this, and she said, well, the situation is bad, the brain situation. Now, this is a common bias. As an actor, you know, the one who does acting, you have this was wrong, it's always an environment. I'm late because of traffic. Okay? I'm mad because somebody makes me mad. If you're an observer, your husband is mad. Oh, he's an angry man. He's an angry man. He's bad temper. Something wrong with him. It's not because something makes him mad. He's not because his boss gave him a rough day. Like, oh, he's a bad man. He's an angry man. So when husband and wife begin to each attribute the other person as being bad, there's no solution to marriage, right? Because you can't change the person. You can change behavior, you can change attitude, but you can't change the person. Even if the person is bad, the marriage is finished. Right? But people make dispositional attribution all the time. Often blame the problem to the person. The final point is scapegoating. Scapegoating means, actually scapegoating is both evil. You know why? Scapegoating that when you do something bad, you make a mistake. Instead of owning up to the mistake, you blame someone helpless. So for example, if I had a bad day at work, I come home, I pick on Alex.
I
With
do.
Tiny, right? I throw a temper on him. And then he got mad. He don't want to kick, he kicked the cat.
Yeah, great.
Right?
Yeah, good kid.
See how it works, right? So I bring all my problem on him, he bring all my problem on the cat. The stupid cat, get out of my way,
Remember when you abused the dog?
So you frame an innocent person for a problem that's very evil, right? Because you know why? You hurt other people and also hurt yourself in the long run. You do things that don't help anybody, right? So scapegoating is very common.
No, don't go to the other slide.
Huh?
Can I stop you here for a second? Maybe you can help me. I noticed that I have some of this in the recent past.
Huh?
I noticed that I have some of this in the recent past. And I am aware of them, I'm acting sometimes like this, And I'm not talking about the last one when I'm arguing with Alex and Alex arguing with the dog or something like this. But some of them, it's without noticing. It comes later on, when I realize that, oh my God, why did I do this? Because this is not good. I am victimizing myself because I don't find work, I'm telling to everybody that I cannot find work. I have a very broad problem right now related to all those things.
Yeah.
Is there a way of fixing them?
Yeah. If you aware, many of things are unconscious.
I was going to say, you know what? One of the first things, a really good sign, is that you're aware of these now.
No, but
Before you weren't.
Yes, no.
That's a huge step.
No, I am, but I don't like them because I notice after that when I'm going back to bed and I'm having my night sleep, I'm thinking, why did I do all those things, And I realize, but I do not, something happens that they come out involunteer or volunteer or I don't know what happens, but it happens because I'm frustrated and I'm blaming others for my insuccess.
Yeah. So you realize now, right? That's big plus. You know why? Because your future will be better, right?
Yeah.
You see, I learned a lesson, I will not make the same mistake.
Exactly.
Do you remember I said that yes, sometimes I do?
Right? Okay. Restoration of ability, okay? Now ultimately we're responsible for our future, right? So the choice between us that blame others for your problems or assume full ability. So there's always a choice, right? Blame others or assume ability. Right? We're not responsible for what happened, but we're responsible for how we react. Right? Now here's the thing, okay? But when we do counseling, or when we do advising other people, we have to make sure that we do not blame the victim. Okay? You know why? But the tricky part, okay? For example, people who are victims of sexual abuse, okay? Sexual abuse, or violence, okay? Or rape victims, okay? So they already suffered, okay? But if we say, now, you are responsible for your life, think about that, okay? Now, if I'm responsible for your life, then that may be interpreted as I'm responsible for the abuse I've experienced. Then in that sense, you're blaming the victim, right? If I'm responsible for all my actions, for all what happened to me, then I might feel guilty that have I done something wrong. See? I mean, victim of sexual abuse, all people wonder whether they've done anything wrong, whether they invite the attack or whether there is some reason responsible. So the key is that you empower them without making them feel that you're blaming them. Okay? You empower them to take charge of their life without feeling guilty without blaming themselves for what happened to them. So that can be achieved, say, you are not responsible for what happened to you. Okay? You're not responsible for terrible things that happened to you, but you're responsible for how you react. You're responsible for how you put your life back together again. Right? And you can put life back together again. That's empowerment. So that's a fine line, okay? Only carry out our responsibility for ourselves and others can we find fulfillment and flourishing. Okay? We'll come to the end now. Now, development ability. Now, further along, we always remember the rippling effect. Okay, everything you do or say has a rippling effect. Okay. Even the constraints, you can always exercise some freedom within the constraint. And thirdly, assume responsibility for your life and have the courage to do the right thing. The courage of man. Courage is involved in every single virtue. When you courage, you know, life intelligence. When you courage, for ability. In everything, without courage, you can't live. But life is tough, right? Life is tough. Without courage, it will go very far. And hold yourself accountable to God and to other people. Now, here's the interesting thing, the 3 R's. Usually, people talk 3 R's means reading, writing, arithmetic, right? 3 R's. The 3 R's are the basic for academic achievement, but these 3 R's is for citizenship, for good citizenship, for global citizenship, responsibility, respect, and resourcefulness. You can check this link. Now, here's from Adler, okay, about 3 R's, okay. So Adler contributed a great deal to positive education. So the first person who talk about positive education is not Martin Seligman, it's Adler, Alfred Adler. He said that in school, we need to provide an encouraging and democratic environment. Encouraging means that we encourage the children, we empower them, we give them a voice, we listen to their opinion. For example, when a kid misbehaves, now I say, Alex, now tell me, you have been acting out lately. Tell me, Alex, what do you try to accomplish with this acting out? Huh? See, I quite democratic now. See, okay, tell me. You're acting out, right? You know what acting out? Kids are acting out. When you put a kid in a position of inferiority, listen, do this. When the power struggle between the teacher and student, or between mother and child, when the power struggle, you try to use your authority as size, okay? You try to force the kid to do what you want. It's not democratic. It's not encouraging. What to do? When the kids were put in a position of inferiority, they fight back by acting out. You follow me? Mm-hmm. You're acting out because you're angry with me, because you want to do what I tell you to do. You're acting out because you want to get attention. You're acting out because you say you have power. You say you have power, mommy? I act out. What can you do about me? Eh? I got power too. See the power struggle, right? Do you understand what I'm saying, right? Have you done that before?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, okay. He confessed now, okay.
We did have sometimes.
Now, encouragement is simply do not use your force of authority or your size, because the kid will outgrow you, he'll beat you up one day, right? So what you use natural and logical consequence. Natural consequence that if you misbehave or do something bad, there might be a natural consequence. For example, you play with fire, what is the natural consequence? You got burned, right? Or you drive the car carelessly, you smash the car, you might get killed. That's the natural consequences, right? But sometimes parents do not want to see the kid suffer a natural consequence, which can be fatal, right? So they develop logical consequence. In other words, you engineer environment so that they can learn from it. Right? They know that you do this, that there's some consequences. It's negative, but it's negative. For example, if you refuse to eat the food prepared, the negative consequence will be starving, right? Come, Alex, no food for you. Sorry, no food. You know, back me down, it's still too late. The negative consequence. A logical consequence will be, Alex, you know what? If you don't eat food, no dessert. Today, what your favorite dessert, okay? Yeah. Dessert come after food. If you don't eat food, no dessert. Right? So you try to discipline so natural logical consequence rather than so using threatening. Right? And don't put your children in position priority. And also, don't do for children what they do for themselves. Pampering is just as bad as neglect.
Can you put my socks on?
Pampering is just as bad as neglect. Neglect is abuse, right? Child abuse, exactly. But pampering also child abuse. You know why? You're depriving the kid for developing independence and ability, right? You're handicapping the child. You baby him, so he never grow up, doesn't know how to live outside home. They're cruel. They're very cruel.
Yeah.
So conclusion, okay? Blaming never get you anywhere. Stop blaming. Forget it. Move on, okay? Remember the action is the key to flourishing. And we all have the freedom and ability to create a better future. Always remember the rippling effect of our work and action. So don't do anything you will regret. Thank you.